Welcome to episode 116 of I Thought I Knew How, a podcast about knitting and life and all sorts. I'm your host, Anne Frost, and this episode was recorded on May 16th, 2024. It's been about a month since I was able to record, so let's do a bit of a catch-up today. I have some information for you about the Woolly Good Gathering in Edinburgh that happened a few weeks ago, and some thoughts about the newly released Shetland Wool Week hat and patron announcement, and an update about progress on the MRI scanner for Shetland that was fundraised for, about 5 years ago now, plus more information about the upcoming Stitch and Pitch event in Hartford. Let's get going. I am in Shetland at the moment, so apologies early on if there's a difference in the sound quality of this recording. I don't have quite the same setup for recording here that I do when I'm in the US. Longtime listeners may remember that recording in Lerwick sometimes gives me some weird interference that I have yet to identify. Someone told me it was due to proximity to a cell tower. That might well be the case. It seems that in my current flat, it happens less often than when I was smack dab in the middle of town. So if we do have some problems, I will do my best to snip it out. I arrived a couple of weeks ago after attending the Woolly Good Gathering in Edinburgh, and the weather here has been absolutely brilliant. I got no work done at all for the first 5 days I was here, or I should say I got no desk work done. I did all sorts of errands and repairs and maintenance on the flat and garden to take advantage of the sunny weather. I spent long enough working on the grass one day that I even got a bit of a sunburn, which really surprised me. I don't often think about Shetland and sunburns going together in my mind, but I was extra surprised because it was only about 13 degrees Celsius or about 55 Fahrenheit. If I was at home, I'd still be wearing a jacket in 55 degree weather, but here it feels warmer. It's very odd. I'm not going to complain. But let's talk about Woolly Good though. It was brilliant, just really, really well done. I was there managing a table that featured products from 4 Shetland makers: Uredale Yarns, Donna Smith Designs, Mella Hand Soap, and Paperwork Furniture. Donna Smith was also there, which was grand. I appreciated both having a second person there to help and the chance to get to know her a bit better. The idea of the table was that it was a low-risk way to feature some Shetland-made products at a time when Shetlanders were entering into the lambing season. So getting to the event themselves would have been a bit of a stretch. In addition to the Shetland collaboration table, Midwinter Yarns, who's a hand dyer based on Bressa here in Shetland, was in the same room as us, as well as Jameson's of Shetland. The room was full of vendors from Scottish Islands, so the last corner housed a booth for Uist Wool, which gave me a chance to meet Donna in person. Some of you may be familiar with Uist Wool because it's a brilliant natural wool yarn from the Hebrides, and it was featured as a vendor in the first online International Fibre Festival. And the final booth in our room was for the Journal of Scottish Yarn. It was a great 2 days for us in the island room, and I'd like to thank those of you who came by the booth to say hello. Our room of the marketplace was in the basement level, right next to a room that featured a few massage artists and a lounge area for festival goers. There was also an area of that room that had samples made by designers for people to look at in person, and some of the designers were there in person to answer questions and meet people. On the ground floor, there was a larger marketplace room and a few classrooms. Now, I'll pause here for a moment and describe the venue. Summer Hall used to be a medical school, so the dyeing classes took place in actual lab classrooms, and the talks took place in a historic surgery classroom. And I'm sure you know the type. You've seen them in period dramas where the students are in steep stadium-style seating with large windows at the ceiling level to allow as much light in as possible so they can watch the surgery taking place down below. It's the first time I've ever been in a room like that, and it felt quite dramatic just standing there looking up at all the seats. The marketplace rooms on the ground floor and the first floor, or what Americans would call the first and second floors, were large dance hall type rooms, and the organizers had the vendors around the edges only. They could have crammed another row of vendors through the center of each of those rooms, but they left that space open. So even at the busiest moments, you still felt like you could move or flee or just stand and let people get around you. It was refreshing to see user experience prioritized over maximizing the retail space. I have to say this was a few weeks ago and my memory is getting a little bit rusty. I believe that on the ground floor, there were also a couple of cafe spaces. I know there were cafe spaces. I think they were on the ground floor. They may have been one floor up and I'm misremembering, but either way, the event was spread over the 3 floors, but there were elevators available as well as a few stairways. In one of the cafes, there was space for a live band, and people and organizations were invited to stage displays in some glass cases and do various demonstrations in front of them. Across the courtyard of the building, there was a pub where you could get a meal, and there were other restaurants and such within walking distance, as well as a large park kitty corner to the event space if you wanted to go outside and get a little break. There also was a quiet room for event goers. I never did go to that room though, but I know it was there. I've helped people with their stands at many events in the past, and I have never been so well treated by organizers as I was at this event. There was a quiet room just for vendors, and there were volunteers who were able to mind your booth for you if you didn't have someone there to help you. They also arranged lunch for us on the Saturday, and the volunteers would come by periodically with water, juice, and snacks to make sure our blood sugar levels stayed up and we stayed hydrated. I just felt pampered. I saw quite a few friends who were there to teach and made a few new friends who came by to say hello for a chat. Now I'm going to put on my creative event management student hat. I know I recently talked about the environmental impacts of events and that the most polluting aspect of an event is the pollution produced by people traveling to an event. And it's no small impact. It's something like 60 to 80% of the pollution that can be attributed to an event. So it's therefore no small thing to consider whether you should travel to events like this or whether you should opt to be pleased to patronize the events in your area. Is this an event you should travel to attend? If you are in the UK, it's an absolute yes. I mean, just yes. It was great. Get yourself to the Woolly Good Gathering next year. If you are outside of the UK, I would say don't travel just for this event. However, Edinburgh has become quite the travel gateway for many areas of Europe and North America, and I know that many Americans dream of traveling to Scotland due to historic ties to the area. And some people just feel drawn to see Scotland or Edinburgh in general because of the history and the learning and just everything that's there. My recommendation would be that if any of that describes you, don't travel just to go to the Woolly Good Gathering, but if you have that dream of visiting Scotland, try to arrange that dream trip so that it coincides with the event. Next year, the dates for the Woolly Good Gathering are April 4th to 5th, 2025. If you're toying with the idea of traveling to Scotland in 2025, that would actually be a good time to go. Edinburgh and Scotland as a whole, once schools and universities are out for the year, sort of mid-May to September, fills up. It gets really difficult to walk through the city. Traffic along the North Coast 500 slows down to a crawl. Tourist sites in general get packed. The weather in Scotland is always a risk. It's no more risky in April than any other time of the year. And if you travel in April, you're going to miss a lot of that deeply crowded time. Also, I would say if you work in fiber events, I would recommend that you go to the Woolly Good Gathering and see how they're doing it. It was that well run. Again, I want to say a hearty well done to the organizers. You really knocked it out of the park with this event. Let's pause for a song, and then I'll be back with some long-winded ramblings. That's what the good folks come here for. This is a song from Tom Goldstein, who's featured on the show before. This is Today. Back in a moment.
Today is gonna be fine. It's bright stars will align, reminding us, oh, you were meant to be mine. To finish our ongoing decline. If you're ready, I will be a white pine, reminding you I'm right here at your side. Each time to let me have a closer look at the tide. Each time to let the people close to you inside. Each time to let me have a closer look at the tide.
Right. So this episode has actually been on ice for over a week because I wasn't in love with my idea for this second segment and I couldn't bring myself to sit down and write it up. But just now, I was down in my kitchen working on my next yarn balm, what I wanted to talk about instead. So here I am with a new notion in mind. I expect by now most of you know that the Shetland Wool Week patron and hat were released a few weeks ago. The patrons for this year are the Dual family. Specifically, Addie and Margaret Dual and their daughter Anne will be taking on most of the patron duties. I first met the parental Duals when I accompanied Jeanette Budge to their home a few years ago to help her film an interview with them for some online content for Shetland Wool Week when everything was just in that immediately post-COVID weirdness. They have been involved with the Shetland Sheep Society and Flock Book for many years now. A flock book is a record of all the participant sheep in the area. In this case, the Shetland Flock Book is a record of the Shetland breed sheep in Shetland that are part of this scheme with their characteristics and breeding history. The included sheep have to conform to the breed standard that was set in 1927, nearly 100 years ago now, and it's a way to ensure that the Shetland sheep breed is preserved. We are all going to get a chance to learn more about the Duals and the Shetland sheep preservation effort through the year, I'm sure. If you would like to get a jump on that, though, the 2022 Shetland Wool Week Annual is still available in the Shetland Wool Week store, and that has an interview that Jeanette Budge did with Anne Dual about working on the croft and the Shetland Flock Book. Anne was tasked with designing the hat for us this year and came out with the Islesborough Tory, which, to be honest, I have so many hats, most of them Shetland Wool Week hats, that at this point I was thinking I may not knit the hat this year. But then it was released, and I thought it was so clever that I absolutely knew, as soon as I saw it, I knew I was going to make at least one of them, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to do two. Anne's design has a round of ram's heads through the center of the hat, which is a lovely nod to the family's crofting and involvement with the Shetland Sheep Society. But what really cinched it for me was that above and below the round of ram's heads, Anne designed a Fair Isle representation of Print in the Wave lace as a nod to her mother's beautiful lace knitting. Margaret is an exceptional lace knitter, all the more so given that she had a stroke a while back, which limited her ability to use one of her arms. But with the aid of a knitting belt, Margaret was able to re-teach herself how to knit lace, including fine lace, one-handed. And it's stunning. She's producing stunning lace, knitting with one hand and a knitting belt. It's incredible. So I saw the hat and I knew that, yes, I was going to knit it. And I got it cast on. And I got as far as the crown before I realized I'd misread part of one round of the previous chart. And rather than creating curls at the end of the simulated lace, I'd done 7 repeats that made ovals. And I just put it away. I couldn't look at it. I made a noticeable error for part of a round. If I made the same error the entire way around the hat, I would have just left it. But it was part of a round, and it was from a previous chart, and I'd already done decreases. So I knew that, even now, I'm exasperated. It was this whole saga. And I did end up fixing it. And if you'd like to see how, I posted about it on my Instagram and in the I Thought I Knew How Facebook group. I don't want to divert into that right away because I think the photos will help with understanding how I worked the repair. But it was in timeout. That's the point. The hat was in timeout. And while the hat was in timeout, I decided it was time to do another yarn bomb. And the Islesborough Tory design was the perfect inspiration. So for those of you who might remember, I created a yarn bomb here in Lerwick. Was it last year? I think it was early last year, using twine, because there's a sidewalk in town. The sidewalk's a little elevated from the other part of the sidewalk. And so there's a safety railing with mesh metal inserts between the railing and the ground. And in one area, that mesh metal insert had a huge hole in it, and all around it was all rusted. I mean, it's an island community. The air is salty, metal rusts, but it was like pokey and horrible. And I was like, I'm going to fix that with some knit lace. So I knit lace, and the first incarnation of it, I knit it in bird's eye lace, and I knit it in the right shape to just sort of fill the hole. But that meant that there was still pokey bits exposed. So I knit a panel of Print of the Wave lace, and I just sort of covered the whole opening just as a rectangular panel. And that's been hanging there for about a year. And I decided, well, I'm not going to deal with this hat. This hat is making me grumpy, and I'm in denial, and I will probably eventually fix it. But for now, I don't want to deal with it. So I got more of the Nutscene garden twine at the Peary shop here in town, and I got to work, and I decided to use the Islesborough charts as my guide. So I knit charts A and B, which is the corrugated rib that starts the hat, and the Print of the Wave. And then it wasn't going to be long enough if I just knit every chart in order like it is on the hat. So I repeated chart 3 or chart C, which is the ram's head. I repeated that 3 times in a row. And then I did the other repeat of the lace and the corrugated rib. And I think it looks pretty cool. It's hanging up in town. It's not far at all from the Print of the Wave lace panel I hung last year. It's in the same railing. So if you're coming this year, have a wander and see if you can find it. All of that is preamble. All of that was preamble. We're going to eventually get to the thing that made me run upstairs and be like, aha, I know what I want to talk about. I have so much twine left this time and I'm just shy of a week before I have to leave. So I've decided to see if I can get one more yarn bombing done before I go. I don't want to do another Fair Isle panel because the Islesborough inspired one is really a test at this point. The dyed twine fades fast in the sun. I don't know if it's going to make it to Wool Week because of that. But I figured if it doesn't, the natural colored twine holds its color. So instead of being purple, pink, green, and the natural twine, it'll be the natural twine and it will have faded to white. So I figured it'll still work. It just won't look as cool. But in the meantime, I have treated it with a UV protecting spray for fabric. And I'm hopeful that the colors will last through to wool week. But in the meantime, I don't want to risk another color work panel if that UV spray doesn't work out. So I'm back to lace. And I thought, other than print and the wave, what other very Shetland lace pattern could I do? So I decided to do cockleshell. Now, cockleshell lace is known for being tricky. There are patterns out there for sale still. So even though this is a heritage type pattern and it belongs to the world, I'm not going to share information on how to do it specifically. There's designers out there designing with it. Support the designers. I bought a cockleshell scarf pattern from Jamieson's of Shetland through Ravelry. Donna Smith has a beautiful shawl with a cockleshell border called the Sanic shawl that I just happened to see a few nights ago knit up in her lace weight, and it was lovely. I'll put a link to both of the patterns in the show notes so you can have a look. I had a class a few years ago with Rachel Hunter in which she taught us how to do cockleshell as well, but I don't know where the papers for that are. And I'm pretty sure they're back in Connecticut. And so, yeah, I just bought the pattern from Jamieson's and moved on. Now, as I said, cockleshell, notoriously tricky. It's not a pattern you can fudge if you mess up a little. You really need to get every row right. And I don't say that to dissuade you from giving it a go. Most of the rows are not tricky at all as long as you do what the pattern says. And that is the trickiest part, especially for someone like me, who has gotten very comfortable knitting from charts because I've yet to see a charted cockleshell lace pattern. They have always been written out, so I tend to get lost here and there. So I've decided I'm going to add stitch markers between my repeats as I go forward, and I'm hoping that'll help me catch myself when I do deviate from the pattern. It's a 12-row repeat, and I've already had to go back on 4 of the rows, so that gives you a sense for how my attention level has been with this one. But again, it really is more of an issue of just paying attention until you get to the row. So for those of you who haven't seen cockleshell lace before, imagine a few rows of garter stitch topped with a group of elongated stitches that have all been knit into one stitch. So those elongated stitches all come together to form a point. And their gathering means that those bottom rows of garter stitch end up curved. So all together, the long stitches and then the curve at the bottom, it looks like a cockleshell. You often see cockleshell scarves and cowls and shawls in the gift shops here being sold for way less than they should be, because I think people are charging according to how much yarn it takes rather than the skill involved. Because when I tell you that round, the round, where you have to knit 15 elongated stitches together into one stitch is torture, just know that I'm understating things. So to knit an elongated stitch, on the row before, you wrap the yarn extra times before knitting the stitch. And then when you go back to knit over it, you knit and drop those extra wraps and the stitch gets really long. But when you have 15 elongated stitches together and you have to get the needle in, yarn over, and make sure you're getting it out through all of those proper loops, it's a challenge. When I took the class with Rachel Hunter a few years ago, I was so cocky. All you had to do was follow the pattern. I followed the pattern. Things were fine. I don't think I had to knit back at all even in that class. I got through several repeats of cockleshells and I felt like quite the prodigy. What's the big deal? I was so cocky. The class ended. I put the project in my bag and I moved on. We were, mid-tour at that point. I had other projects I had to get to. It was a few months before I went back to finish it. And when I pulled it out of my bag, then, months later, then is when I saw all the loops in those knit 15 togethers that I'd missed, just poking out here and there. Humbling. So this time I was determined not to let that happen. I got myself a crochet hook. With the crochet hook, I put the stitches, all 15 of the stitches onto the hook, let the extra wraps drop, and then just pull the working yarn through. So tip 1 for working the cockleshell, try using a crochet hook for your knit 15 togethers. Tip 2, do not knit cockleshell on circular needles. All of those extra wraps that you need for those elongated stitches end up pulling tight or overlapping on top of one another. And when they get to the cord part of the circular needle, and then you have to slide it back onto the needle portion, those things tighten up. And it is such a pain. Just use straight needles. Okay. So that was all of the preamble. We're done with the preamble now. I'm going to get to the point now. So I was downstairs. I was finishing the 12th row of my 12-row repeat of the cockleshell lace pattern for this yarn bombing panel that I'm hoping to have finished in the next few days. And I realized something. Some creative genius somewhere came up with this. And we have no idea who. Do you know how prolific of a knitter you need to be to feel confident to play around with lace knitting? Someone, most likely a woman, so I'm going to roll with that, someone out there at some point in history looked at a cockleshell and thought, I wonder if I could mimic that shape with yarn. Or conversely, she thought, elongated stitches are kind of fun. I wonder what would happen if I knit 15 of them together, and then decided it looked kind of shell-like and went from there. Either way it happened, it was a stroke of brilliance that has been copied by hundreds, if not thousands, of knitters since. And we have no idea who she was. And barring the discovery of a journal in an attic somewhere where a knitter talks about having a play with her knitting one day and coming up with this sort of shell type pattern, we never will. So most likely we will never know. And I think everyone in the knitting community would agree that this is the sort of thing that we should know. And it's a shame that we don't know. But we still engage in the very behaviors that allow this sort of thing to happen. This is the sort of thing that happens when we gatekeep our knowledge or by simply not attributing where we learned things from. And I'm pretty sure I talked about this just a few episodes again, but it's here again, front of mind. It doesn't take anything away from you to name who you learned something from. And when you do attribute, not only are you keeping that bit of information intact for others who want to learn now or in the future, but acknowledgement is a motivating factor for some. When we talk about preserving heritage crafts, part of the case made is creating economic incentives for people to stay in the field. And let's face it, named designers and teachers who can build up a reputation for their skills earn more. But aside from the straightforward financial side of things, acknowledgement also plays a role for many. When you tell a kid they can become a renowned, respected person if they do something, that's a driver for them. Certainly it's more motivated than telling them they can work away at something for little pay and no recognition. Let's not be blind to these facts. If we want heritage crafts to persevere in their original areas where the knowledge is at its greatest depth, we need to throw in every motivating factor we can to keep it going. We can't attribute the creation of the cockleshell pattern to any one knitter. We don't know who knit the first OXO pattern in Fair Isle. Who came up with Print of the Wave? No idea. But the next best thing we can do is to name the people who are keeping these things going in heritage craft areas. No more, I learned once in Latvia, or I took a class at Sheltand Wool Week and learned, or a German lady does this. No, learn these names. Bring a notebook to classes and write down the teachers' names in your notes. If you are a teacher and you're passing on something you learned from another teacher, tell your students the name of that teacher. Name and link the designers and knitters in your social media posts. Naming these heritage crafters is a big part of keeping the crafts themselves alive. Okay, I've said my piece. Again. Knit cockleshell and tell people where you learned things from. Keep this train moving forward, folks. Let's have a song While I've been here in Shetland, as I said, the weather has been amazing and it's definitely feeling very summery here. And so you know what that means here on the podcast. It is time for some country music. This is an old-timey country-sounding song, and it's a real beauty. This is Brad Howard with Deeper Than the Heart.
I lose my mind without you, and sense of direction in every way. Like a hunger with no food, I'd be starving for your face. I've never loved like this before. Girl, I want you more and more. Imagine diving in the sea, going as far as you can go, and never finding bottom. It's like an endless hole. Girl, when it comes to you, one thing I've come to know: the depths of my love go so far. Well, it goes deeper than the heart. I've never let go quite like this. I surrender, I'm in your hands. What I get is loneliness. Well, that's alright, I'll take the chance. I've never loved like this before. It's beyond my dreams and more. Imagine diving in the sea, going as far as you can go, and never finding bottom. It's like an endless hole. And girl, when it comes to you, one thing I've come to know: the depths of my love go so far. Well, it goes deeper than the heart. Tell me that you feel the same way too. But if you don't, it won't change my love for you. Depths of my love go so far. It goes deeper than the heart, than the heart.
A few more things before I go. Many of you remember the Harriet's Hat series of patterns designed by Harriet Middleton to raise funds for an MRI scanner for the hospital in Shetland. The whole community undertook this fundraising project with the goal to raise £2 million to buy the scanner so that folks could have their MRI scans locally instead of having to travel to Aberdeen. Kids were selling lollipops at schools and people were hosting dances and things like that. Harriet and the MRI Mackers raised over £100,000 through the sales of the patterns and knitted items, and I know that many of you were part of that fundraising effort. Finally, just a week ago, the MRI scanner arrived in Shetland. It was a long time coming, and the price rose in the interim to over £3 million, but part of that was due to COVID and inflation and the need for a purpose-built addition to the hospital to house it. But now, after 5 years, a hearty congratulations to Harriet and the MRI Mackers and all the other fundraisers for a job well done indeed. Some of you also are aware of Terry Laura. She was the designer for last year's Shetland Hog Mini Box, and she's a very gifted teacher of knitting and an advocate for wool use, and she's a designer and basically an all-around talented woman. Terry is also about to embark on maternity leave, and channeling that nesting energy, she has decided to do a major clear out sale of her showroom. I have been privy to some of the things she's planning to sell, and it's going to be quite the offering. And there's something I have my eyes on, and if one of you gets it before I do, I'm going to be very grumpy. I'm just putting that out there. I will put links to her website, Facebook, and Instagram accounts in the show notes, so make sure you are following her or get on the mailing list. But this special sale is coming up tomorrow morning, May 17th at 10 a.m. British time. So that's 5 a.m. Eastern time. So I hope you are listening to this as soon as it went live so you don't miss out. But look for it even if you're a little late to the party, because a little birdie told me that if things like take a while to sell, the deals are going to get better. Finally, I have updates about the Stitch and Pitch event coming on August 17th at Duncan Park in Hartford, Connecticut. Tickets are going to go on sale next week. When? I do not know. Why do I not know? Because in trying to set up a landing page for the event, I totally messed up my website, and now my web guy is having to fix things and then make the landing page for me, and then the tickets will go live. I will keep you posted through my social media and mailing list. So if you're not already following me, look for the links in the show notes or hop to ithoughtIknewhow.com to get on the mailing list. Just scroll down a little on the webpage and you'll see where to enter your mailing address. But details, the game is a Saturday evening. It starts at 6:10, but you will want to get there earlier so you can come by the Stitch and Pitch booth to say hello. There are 119 seats available for this event. There will be 2 types of tickets on sale. A regular ticket will get you your seat. A $2 credit towards stadium concessions. You'll have to have your ticket to show when you place your order. And an entry for one of 9 inning prizes. So at the end of every inning, through innings 1 through 8, and then at the start of the 9th inning, because we don't want to make people have to hang around and wait for us to do the final drawing. We'll do it at the beginning of the 9th inning. We will have a drawing for those who are in attendance for the event. If you are a Connecticut-based fibercraft-related business and would like to offer one of the prizes, please be in contact to learn about the benefits of sponsoring a prize. Prizes currently include gifts from U&U Fiber Arts in Windsor, Connecticut, and the Yarn Barn in Woodbridge, Connecticut. Lumos has also sent around-the-neck lights to be included with each of the inning prizes. So, you may have seen it on my Instagram where the light rests over your shoulders and you can aim it to aim right at your knitting. So it's perfect for when you're doing dark colored knitting or if you're just in a low light situation. And there's more prizes in the works. The premium ticket will get all of those things included with the regular ticket, plus a cotton tote swag bag filled with goods from our event sponsors. So who's our sponsors? We have Hilly Knits, who's Hilly Vandersloot, the designer. We have Clover USA, Uradale Yarns, Knit Pro, which you might know as Knitter's Pride. They're Knit Pro overseas, and now they're going to be Knit Pro everywhere. Unicorn Wash, which is a great wool wash, and the I Thought I Knew How podcast. There will be some slight variations with the contents of the bags, but all of the bags will have a retail value of at least $50. My thought in offering the regular tickets and the premium tickets is that those who are coming with a non-crafty friend or a family member or multiples can opt to buy a ticket without the swag bag for them and make things a little bit more affordable for folks. There are only a limited number of regular tickets available. So I ask that people please leave those for the non-crafty people. When you order, you are pre-ordering your tickets. So what's going to happen is the Yard Goats will send me a login 2 weeks before the event, and then I will go in and manually assign tickets to those who order, and you'll get an email at that point with a ticket. and then you can print the ticket off or have it ready on your device to show when you arrive at the stadium. So again, I'm hosting this event. The Yard Goats are not hosting the event. So if you go to their website and you're like, it's April 17th, and it says it's like an event honoring a baseballer, like why doesn't it say Stitch and Pitch? It's because this is hosted by I Thought I Knew How. So I will get access to the tickets 2 weeks before. You will get an email with the ticket at that point with the ticket information in it. Okay, so that's how the ticketing will work. You are encouraged to bring a manageable project along with you to the event. It's not Knit in Public Day, but we can make it our own Craft in Public Day together. When the website goes live, there will be more information about accessibility, parking, and things to do in Hartford in case you'd like to travel to the event and make a long weekend of it. The web address should be ithoughtIknewhow.com/stitch, the letter N, pitch. So Stitch and Pitch, but instead of and, it's just the letter N. When that goes live. Hopefully it will be live by May 20th, which is this coming Monday, and then the tickets should go live soon after that. Regular tickets with the $2 concession credit and entry for the inning prizes will be $25. Premium tickets that include all of that, plus the swag bag worth $50, will be $35 thanks to the support of our kind sponsors. I'm here in Shetland for a few more days, and then I'm back in the US and back into my master's program. I'm very proud to report that I finished my first class with distinction. Thank you, gold stars abounding. So while I have had to slow down episode releases as I do this program, I think I have found a balance that is working. It feels like a very good place to be. But that said, we're still going to be having fun. I hope to see you at the Stitch and Pitch in August. Watch my social media or get on the mailing list to get first chance at those tickets when they go live. And in the meantime, thank you for listening and knitting with me for a bit. If you enjoy the show, please rate and review the show in the app you use to download it. And I'd love it if you would share the episode with a friend. The show notes are where you will find links to the things mentioned in the show, so be sure to check those out. Find me on my social media accounts as I Thought I Knew How, except on X, where it's just Thought I Knew How. The groups on various platforms are all called I Thought I Knew How Podcast. Until next time, may you be blessed with stitches that never drop, yarn without joins, and plenty of time to knit.